Pacers lose in Phoenix to wrap up the road trip. Holy moly, is Kevin Durant good. So was Jalen Smith and Jarris Walker, but not everybody. Pacers lose a close one. We'll break it all down and more about the halfway point of the season on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, y'all. Hope you had a great weekend, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today we have a lot to talk about from Pacers, Suns, and the air quotes halfway point of the season. This little trade got in the way of talking about the halfway point at the actual halfway point, so we'll do it 2 days later, and we'll talk about the game that was Sunday night. Pacers lose a close one in Phoenix, take a late lead, and can't close the game out at all. Jalen Smith was awesome. Jarris Walker was awesome. A lot of other guys were not so awesome. And the Pacers are now 24-19, closing out a 2-4 road trip. I don't really know what the perfect way to start talking about this game is, which is why I have notes. But it's a really interesting game to look at, because part of me wants to say the theme you saw the whole game from this was the Pacers played pretty well in general. I thought their bench, if they had this bench performance Friday, they would have beat the Blazers by 20. Their bench was much better. Pascal was fine. The Pascal at center lineups were awesome. The Pascal not at center lineups were not so awesome, both him individually and the team. They had a lot of stuff go well with Buddy Hield shooting. Miles Turner made some nice defensive plays, and yet they got smoked in certain moments. And what this game came down to is the Pacers playing pretty well, executing, being like 80% of peak consistency. But the Suns just have 3 stars, and 1 or 2 of them are always on the court at least. And so even at the Pacers' absolute apex, they could not quite keep up with the Suns. At their very, very best in this mid-fourth quarter stretch, Andrew Nembhard was doing great on Devin Booker. Guys on the Pacers were scoring. Buddy Hield was hitting threes. They looked really threatening. They took a lead, right? I guess the end of the game is the best place to start. Pacers were up with 10-13 to go in the second quarter. Then they gave up that lead, and they were trailing for all of the rest of the second and all of the third quarter and most of the fourth quarter until that moment. It was never like a big deficit. I think the biggest they got was like 11 or 10, but it felt like the Suns were pretty in control until that run I just described in the mid to late fourth, where the water just got cut off for the Suns, and the Pacers deserve a lot of credit. Suns hit 101 points with 8:11 to go in the third quarter, and they were at 103 until 2:59 to go when KD hit a 3. So for over 5 minutes, the Pacers defense was awesome, right? Andrew Nembhard was doing a good job on Devin Booker. They were, in general, finding ways to make KD at least uncomfortable. Like, it was, in general, their best stretch defensively of the game. They weren't scoring awesome, but they were scoring enough to slowly catch up. Buddy Hield hit a couple threes. Obi Toppin was scored in there. I think Siakam hit some free throws. And they take a lead, right? 105-103. And so in the moment, I was thinking, wow, they've actually found a consistent way to keep up with the Suns in this stretch. Maybe they can close this game out. They're winning. The vibes are good. The offense is clicking. Then the Suns took a timeout with 3 minutes and 20 seconds to go. And what did they do on the next 3 possessions? They targeted Buddy Hield. They made sure to target Buddy Hield, who was on the floor because he was scoring. Buddy Hield, solid offensive game, terrible defensive game. But with Nembhard out there and with Siakam out there at the 5, because that lineup was effective. We'll talk about stuff that didn't go well for the Pacers in a minute. KD hits a 3 on a Devin Booker assist. Siakam turns it over. Not a good play. Devin Booker hits a free throw on an Nembhard foul. Bradley Beal scores at the rim. Another bad turnover by Siakam. He was not good in that minute and a half stretch. Beal scores again. 107-111. Suns are winning. That was doom. That was doom for the Pacers. They did not reach 111 for the game. So they were riding a high, and then it crashed down because the Suns have 3 stars, and you can't hide Buddy Hield everywhere in that moment. Taking him off the floor would have made some sense, but 1, there were very few reasonable stoppages to sub, and 2, his offense was part of what got them back in the game. I'm not defending keeping him out there. I'm just explaining why it could have happened, and they lose. That is the story of the ending of the game, even though they did so well to work back. So what didn't work and what worked? We'll start with what didn't work because it was a loss. Buddy Hield, ironically, right? This says everything about the Suns. This is what I tweeted after I can't remember the game. Buddy Hield starts in this game. Tyrese Halliburton didn't play. I should have led with that. But anyway, Buddy Hield, 31 and a half minutes, 6 for 10 from the field, 5 for 8 from deep, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. Normally, that is the type of game where his impact would look pretty good, right? They'd be even-ish or better in his minutes, even though his defense has not been good this season. They can survive if he's shooting that well and playing good enough offense. He was minus 20, right? When he was out there, he got picked on a lot by the Suns. And it's not like my theory on Buddy Hield from earlier this season was he went from like a 5th to 10th percentile defender to like a 15th to 20th percentile defender. So better, but still, below average, substandard, certainly. And so sometimes you can hide that. Sometimes you just try to make him on ball and focused all the time, even though his team defense isn't good. And the Suns, there's nowhere to hide. There's just nowhere to go that makes any reasonable sense, especially if you're switching a lot. So his defensive impact just was not it. Wasn't working for the Pacers despite a good offensive night. Miles Turner in this game, 5 for 11, only 2 rebounds, 2 blocks, 1 assist, 12 points. Didn't have it, right? Wasn't working with him out there either. Nurkic was pounded him inside. He couldn't quite defend all the screen and whatever stuff the Suns were trying to do to get switches. It wasn't working for the Pacers. Nurkic, 13 boards, dominated that matchup, right? So those two vets, 2 guys that I said would be key with Halliburton out, right, were not good. Like their stats were good, but they had some things about what they were doing in this matchup were not particularly useful. And again, Hield was awesome in Sacramento, being the backup point guard. Turner's had a great road trip tonight. Not their night. The best lineups the Pacers had at center in this game were either with Jalen Smith, who was unbelievable. We'll talk about that in the second segment, or with Pascal Siakam at the 5. That is something I want to explore in more detail at a later point. But they did that. They turned to that quite a bit in this game. And on defense, it was kind of working because the Suns were ill-prepared matchup-wise, and it worked good enough. And on offense, it was really working. Siakam, 7 assists, led the Pacers. I wouldn't say he was like awesome in this game or anything, but he did some good stuff in his 30 minutes. And playing the 5 was a really interesting wrinkle I did not expect the Pacers to go to in his second game. But Carlisle did say this, right? When they acquired him, he was talking to reporters in Sacramento. He said, we know he's a 4. We think he can play some 3 and even some 5 in some certain alignments. And I thought that was really interesting. I had never really considered that. They turned it in this game and it worked. But the minutes with just Turner to 5 were not there. Andrew Nembhard. Let's talk about Andrew Nembhard. Andrew Nembhard, 6 assists for a good thing. 3 for 9 from the field, not a good thing. Guarded Devin Booker, awesome in this game. Booker, 9 for 24 for his 26 points in this one. Nembhard made it hard for him. 2 turnovers as well. Bad thing for Nembhard, 4 turnovers. Caitlin Cooper tweeted about this. He's dealing with that back injury. You can tell sometimes that he's like not so flexible, a little more rigid. That's not an excuse. That's still bad. Turning it over for any reason is bad. He had a really up and down game. In a clutch moment, Pacers had the ball, I think, down 5 late in the game. Untimely turnover that probably ended their chances of winning. He did some good things. His defense was great. That's why he was on the floor so much. His offense was not so great in this game. But that was the key parts of the Pacers' loss to me. If you wanted to really widen the scope of this Pacers defeat, right? Front court guys, had okay games. Siakam was fine. Jalen Smith was fantastic. We'll talk about that in a second. Jarris Walker was awesome. Obi Toppin was hitting stuff and rebounding, right? Front court minutes were good. They did well to get Yusuf Nurkic in foul trouble. He actually fouled out. He fouled out in 19 minutes, right? He fouled out in 19 minutes. Okogie was 0 for 1. Chimezie Metu wasn't doing that much. Keita Bates-Diop and Drew Eubanks were both minuses and plus-minus. They didn't do that much. Pacers did really well in the front court. But the bucket for the loss would be, let's talk some backcourt numbers. Aaron Nesmith, 2 for 7. TJ McConnell, 2 for 8. Ben Mathurin, 1 for 8. Andrew Nembhard, 3 for 9. Ben Shepherd, 1 for 4. Buddy Hield was 6 for 10. He was the only backcourt guy who had any semblance of accuracy. Andrew Nembhard at 33.3% was their second best guard accuracy player in this game. They only turned it over 11 times, but when you're that inaccurate, it's hard to overcome it. And some of that's credit to the Suns defense, but their defense isn't like amazing or anything. I think those guys just all had particularly off nights, and they did some good stuff in other ways, but that is a tough shooting percentage for that group. Ben Mathurin's second consecutive game where the shots aren't falling. So a lot of little stuff went wrong for the Pacers in this one. Down the stretch, they were not good enough. Throughout the game, they could not contain KD. I mean, the stars for the Suns, 91 points for Beal, Booker, Durant. They did pretty well on everybody else. The guards weren't good enough, and they needed a little more from their vets. 24-19, 2-4 road trip. Rhett and I, before the road trip, said, is it more likely they went over half of these games or zero? And said 0 was more likely. But we also both said 2-4 was our predicted record. That is what happened without Tyrese Halliburton for all but one of the games. That doesn't mean it's a success. That just means it's reality. 2-4. Not the road trip the Pacers would have hoped for. Back home with, just the very easy trio of Nuggets, Sixers, Suns, 3 and 4 nights coming up for the Pacers this week. What went right in this game? It wasn't all bad, right? I even hinted at a lot of the stuff in that segment. I'm very good at fence sitting and talking about the good and the bad at the same time. Let's talk about what went right for the Pacers in this game, including Jalen Smith, holy smokes, Jarris Walker, holy smokes also, and some other good things that happened for the Pacers that they'll hope they can carry into future games. But first, we got to talk about the lovely people over at LinkedIn Jobs. It's a new year. Every small business owner is asking the same question. What's the one move I can make that'll take my business to the next level in 2024? LinkedIn Jobs knows that your success all depends on the team you surround yourself with, and that is why LinkedIn Jobs has the tools created to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It's not just another job board. They have a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals. It's the best place to hire. It's easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering high-quality hires versus leading competitors. And LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats, might not have the time or resources to hire. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Back here on Locked On Pacers, thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. For more on Kevin Durant going bananas, the Red Hot Suns, who've only lost to the Clippers and Grizzlies since Christmas, and plenty more on the Phoenix Suns. Brendan Clean of Locked On Suns is the guy for you. Awesome game from their trio. Even though Booker had an off night, they can just interchange and pass and be threatening. I mean, that's what having 3 stars can do in a game like this, and helps when Grayson Allen is a threatening offensive weapon and hits 75% of his threes. Also, Suns are a fun watch right now. They're rounding into form a little bit. Shout out to Frank Vogel. Pacers, good stuff from this game. Coolest shot, individual one shot of the game for me. And USA Today got a picture of it. Jalen Smith posts up. Jalen Smith revenge game against his former team. I just say a revenge game. I have no idea how he feels about the Suns. Jalen Smith posts up Kevin Durant early in the second quarter. Back to the basket. Tries to back down a little bit. It isn't there. He doesn't need to back him down. This is Jalen Smith we're talking about. 2 dribbles away from the rim. Turn around. Fade away 19-footer over 7-foot-tall Kevin Durant. Buckets. Sick shot from Jalen Smith. A perfect play to encompass an awesome night for Jalen Smith. Made all his shots. Made all 3 of his threes. Got to the foul line, 4 boards, plus 11 team high for Jalen Smith, who did a decent job protecting the rim with 2 blocks. He was awesome in this game. Pick and pop, working. Pick and go somewhere else and screen somewhere else. Working defensively, solid, on the glass, good enough. He was really good. Obviously, if you make every shot, you're going to get talked about highly. But in a game like this, especially in the first half, right? If you wanted to talk about another story of this game I didn't even talk about in the first segment, the first quarter, the Suns were on a 17-2 run, like right away, super early in the game. That's how they got their 14-point lead. That was their biggest of the game. Without that, the Pacers played pretty well the whole game, right? And Jalen Smith and the bench got them out of that rut, right? When the bench came in, they cut the lead all the way down and took it early in the second quarter. Jalen Smith was a huge part of that. The fact that the Pacers even had a chance was because he changed the momentum of the game by being so good, especially in the first half. He was making every shot, obviously. He was getting to the right spots. He was playing well within the offense. Awesome game from Jalen Smith. Jarris Walker, one of his better games ever. I've said that a lot about him recently, which is not a lie every single time I've said it. It was his 15th game, so it's not like that high of a percentage chance for him to break his previous best game. 4 for 6 from the field was Jarris Walker. 2 for 3 on 2s and 2 for 3 on 3s. So for 10 points there. An assist, a steal, only 1 turnover. 9 boards, including a tip dunk, his first of his career, I believe. You could see him fitting in offensively, impact-wise, hit a sick pull-up 2. Not very often he takes those. Drilled 2 threes, obviously he's looking more comfortable with that, especially compared to where he was at the start of this season. Almost his first double-double. 1 board away for Jarris Walker. I wasn't sure if he was going to play in this game, given who was available and who wasn't. They put him in early for Ben Mathurin, who got pulled pretty quick from this game. Ben Mathurin, only 14 minutes. He did not have a good night. Jarace Walker earned his 18 and a half minutes in this game, continues to play well. I think his last couple outings have all been pretty solid for various reasons. Sometimes it's the passing, sometimes it's the scoring. It hasn't been the defense yet. It had some defensive head scratchers in this game, but still a +3 in 18 and a half minutes for Jarace Walker. That bench front court duo of Smith Walker was good. And there was even some minutes with Jarace at the 3, which I continue to wonder if the Pacers will try to explore, especially now that Pascal Siakam is on their team, because he's at the 3. Obi Toppin was on the floor. Obi Toppin, a rare, very good performance without being a knockdown shooter. He missed both of his threes, but he was 6 for 12 from the field. He had 6 boards. He had 13 points. He got to the foul line. He defended good enough for his level of defense, +4. The bench front court was really great for the Pacers. Absolutely kicked the Suns' reserve front court's butts from start to finish in this game. Big ups to those 3 guys for doing good stuff for the Pacers and giving them an identity in this game. If they had, I can't even. I mean, they had 14 bench points against the Blazers on Friday. If they got 15 points from Jalen Smith in this game, right? Like, they just needed something, a semblance of this bench Friday, and they win. And instead they didn't get it. And it was just tough for the Pacers all night to get it done. Those 3 guys, though, if you want to talk about the good stuff from this game, Jalen Smith was awesome. The Suns were not aware that he can shoot. I mean, they were leaving him wide open on some of those pops. Jarace Walker really just continues to look more comfortable. I mean, I should just pull up his game log instead of just saying you remembered his recent games, but he was fantastic in multiple more ways than normal. This road trip in general, this is his second straight road trip where you've seen Jarace Walker kind of come alive. Okay. At Utah was Jarace Walker's 26-minute game with 8 points, 4 boards, 4 assists, 4 steals when he set a career high in every stat. The very next game against the Kings is when he had 15, 2, and 2 in his highest scoring game. And now this one, he did not play in Portland. So 3 straight really impressive impact games for Jarace Walker. And if you remember, at the end of their last road trip was when he played in Milwaukee and then played 13 and a half minutes in Washington and then played 24 minutes in Milwaukee, 3 of his previous best games of his career. Jarace Walker getting more comfortable, rounding into form. I would assume this game by game score, Basketball Reference's single game impact metric, will be his best game ever, which was previously their game in Utah last Monday. He was really good. Jalen Smith was even better. No one else really shined up to that level. The Pacers did a lot of stuff statistically that they should feel pretty good about. They crushed it on the offensive glass. They only turned it over 11 times to the Suns 16. Even without Tyrese Halliburton, they took more threes than their opponent, which has been a struggle for them, right? Like, all that kind of stuff is how numerically they can keep up in a game like this, but they sucked at the free throw line. They couldn't get into the paint as much. McConnell, after a really great game in Sacramento, wasn't that awesome in this one. 48 points in the paint for the Pacers. If they had just shot well from the free throw line, 14 for 23, this is how they beat the Kings. The Kings had a terrible free throw shooting game. Tonight, that spreads to the Pacers, who missed 9 free throws in a 7-point loss. I mean, you could point at a lot of stuff, but sometimes when it comes down to it, a lot can go right for you if you're the Pacers. You don't have your best player. You're playing in Phoenix. Kevin Durant's doing some of that stuff. You just lose. You just lose that game. 2-4 trip for the Pacers. They are now on the season 4-5 without Tyrese Halliburton. We'll see if he can play Tuesday or come back. No idea if Rick Carlisle said before the game it was just injury management, not a setback or anything. Interesting he'd play Friday and not 2 days later, but who am I to judge the hamstring injury gods? I think if the Pacers got one guard who played a better game or could make shots in this game, or if they shot their free throws better, or if they just found a little bit better of a way to pre-switch Buddy Hield out of some actions in the last 3 minutes, they could have won this game, but they didn't do any of those things. They lose 24-19. Coming back home, they'll see these guys again in less than a week. We'll cover all that here on the Locked On Pacers podcast. Let's talk about where the Pacers are at this point of the season. 43 games played. The halfway point was last Thursday after the Kings game, but they just made a big trade. They had a big win. We didn't get to talk about it, so we'll do it today. What are the takeaways from the halfway point for the Pacers? What can they look for in the second half? What more is there to know about this team going forward? We'll talk about all of that to close out today's show, but first, had to talk to you guys about BetterHelp. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Around New Year's, we all get obsessed We've had to change ourselves instead of just expanding what we're already doing right. Maybe you finally organize one part of your space and you want to tackle another. Or maybe you're taking supplements every morning and now, like me, you want to eat breakfast too. Therapy helps you find your strengths so you can ditch the extreme resolutions and make changes that really stick. Therapy can be helpful for many people, for learning positive coping skills, for learning how to set boundaries. It can empower you to be the best version of yourself. It isn't just for people who've experienced major trauma. If you are thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch at any time for no additional charge. Celebrate the progress you've already made. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockdownNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockdownNBA. We also have to talk really quick about FanDuel. NFL regular season done, playoffs rolling. What a game in Chiefs-Bills. All coming down to a field goal. And there's so many ways to get in on the action yourself on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers on FanDuel can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Win or lose on FanDuel.com/lockdown. You place a $5 bet, you get $150 in bonus bets. How about that? Their app is super easy to use. There's a ton of different ways to bet, like their new Explore tab where you can find bets. They have live same-game parlays. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and plenty more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockdown. Make your first bet a layup on FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. Back here on Locked On Pacers, thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day for your second listen, hopping around the NBA. I watched the end of the Lakers game after the Pacers game, so check out Locked On Lakers. They needed a field goal, and they beat the Blazers, who the Pacers lost to 2 nights prior. Locked On Lakers with the Kamenetsky brothers is the place for you to go next. Let's wrap this up by talking about the Pacers at the air quotes halfway point. They're 43 games in. I compiled all these stats after their 42nd game, so they're slightly off, but that's okay. The big picture part of what I want to say still stands from my notes. Where the place to cut, this is funny, because the halfway point of the season is a natural cut, right? First 41, second 41. I'm actually going to cut this even further. First 41 asterisk 42 games, right? Let's talk about the Pacers standing. After those 42 games, the Pacers were first in offense. Offensive rating 121.4, best in the league, best ever. Incredible, right? And they were 27th in defense, terrible. 119.5. The 3 teams below them are just awful, atrocious, not trying basketball franchises. And then the Pacers, right? Awful on D, great on offense. We all know that. That is the thesis of the Pacers' first half of the season is, can they get better at defense while still being awesome on offense? Can they make additions to improve both? All sorts of stuff like that. But I cut it at this point I've been talking about a lot on this show. They were on a 4-game losing streak. They were about to play the Charlotte Hornets. I think it was a 4-game losing streak. I'll double check while I'm talking. And on Tuesday, December 19th, they had this really intense practice, like unusually intense. Guys were wearing wraps on their wrists and knees, and they were banged up, and they really focused on defense. It dove into some principles and all sorts of stuff, and they tweaked how they defended ever so slightly, willing to give up slightly different shots. Coverage just changes it a little bit, and they wanted to get better on that end. They played the Hornets the next day. They won. They lost 2 in a row after that and got to 500 and then changed their starting lineup. But from that day, December 19th, when they had that practice, when they refocused, when they slightly made tweaks, through a month, right? Through January 20th. So the Blazers game, because again, we're talking about the first half of the season. They went 11-6 in their next 17 games, right? Remember, before that, they were 13-12, and then they went 11-6. In that stretch, they beat Milwaukee twice. They beat Boston. They beat New York. They got some good wins. They beat Atlanta in Atlanta. They beat Sacramento in Sacramento. Houston on the road. Like, some of those are decent to good wins. Like, they played really good basketball in that stretch. What did they look like in that sample of 17 games compared to the other 25 where they were 13-12? They were 7th in offense, 120.6. So 0.8 points per 100 possessions worse than the other stretch. Than the total package, excuse me. They were 16th, though, in defense, 116.7 defensive rating, nearly 3 points better than their defense prior to that. Still below average, ever so slightly, but way better. So if you'll notice that, the entire 42-game sample, the Pacers' net rating was plus 1.9. In that specific 17-game sample, their net rating was plus 3.9. So that refocusing did help them. So they were 13-12. They had that practice. Then they were 500 3 games later. They changed the starting lineup. And now they are where they are. They have Pascal Siakam now. The second half of their season is going to look a little different. But as I look back through some of the stories and waves of the first half of the season, there's some thoughts that interest me. And one is that already, big picture, this team is better than I thought they would be, right? I ran through the schedule before the season. I thought they would be a 500 team. When I got done with the process, right now, running through that exact exercise, I had them at 18 wins. Their second half schedule is easier than their first half schedule. In fact, after Friday, their schedule eases up quite a bit, right? Quite a bit through. Let me just read you this stretch. They play Boston on January 30th. Then it's Knicks, Kings, Hornets, Rockets, Warriors, Knicks, Hornets, Raptors, Pistons, Mavs, Raptors. That's crazy. That is like, and then it's Pelicans, Spurs. Like, it's not hard at all. So that's why their second half wins are higher than their first half. Doesn't matter. I had them at 18 predicted wins by right now. They have 24, right? They're better than I thought. That is thought number one. And that is something they'll, of course, hope to carry into the second half is this level of play. Being a good team and not an average team. That is a key thing. Even before their changes, they were a better team than I thought they would be, right? Thought two is that they clearly have a sustainable long-term identity, right? They want to play up tempo. They have a superstar in Tyrese Halliburton. They have another star in Pascal Siakam. So they're better than I thought. They have an identity. That's great. That is great for their long term. That's great for their short term. This team is clearly ahead of schedule, at least where I had them. That's all great. But question three now comes from all those splits I just told you about their first 42 games. Who are these guys, right? Who is the Pacers? Who are the Pacers? Are they a fantastic offense that can't defend, or are they a pretty good offense that can kind of defend? Which one is better for them long term? And what does that mean now that they have Pascal Siakam on their team? That is what I'm curious about from their first half to the second half of the season. Who the heck are these guys, right? Because, of course, I'm a numbers guy, right? Sorry to be the wet blanket. 17 games is less than 42. The 17 is a part of the 42, but still, the bigger sample means something to me, but the changes also do, because clearly they had a big impact immediately. Instantly, the team looked better, right? They went on that crazy run after they changed their starting five. Right after Christmas, they were just a different team. They won 6 in a row. They won, 9 of 10, I believe, right? And they're 1-3 since. But still, clearly the changes help them tangibly. Clearly they think they're good because they're trading for Pascal Siakam. And that stretch was their best stretch of the season. So who the heck are these guys? Are they more of the team we saw the first 25 games that now has Pascal Siakam and is thus better than that? But still, are they that team, the best offense ever and an awful defense? Their defense has not been good these last 4 games. Or are they more that team we saw from Christmas until the big trade that was really good on offense, right? 7th in the NBA, 120.5 offensive rating, still amazing, but is actually like incredibly good on defense. Which group are they? I don't know if we'll learn that quickly, but learning that will be the story of the Pacers' second half of the season. If they are that really good team that went 11-6 over 17 games, that's a great team, right? That's 44 wins out of 68 games. If you do some quick math, that means you're already like a 50-win team. Or are they the first team that's closer to like a 45-win team? We'll see. But question 4 is, right? Question 1, thought 1, team better than I thought. Thought 2, they have a sustainable long-term identity. Thought 3, who are they this year? And thought 4, how does Pascal Siakam, for lack of a better term, disrupt it all? Disrupt doesn't have to be bad. He could come in, shake things up, and they'll be awesome. The first game he played in, he looked like a fantastic fit. In this game, he proved to be a solution at center, but his minutes at the 4 didn't go so well. I don't think anyone can guard Kevin Durant, but either way, he wasn't awesome on offense either. Can he help them be better than both of those things, or do they have to kind of make changes to fit him in perfectly? That's not a bad thing. He's a very talented player. We've already seen that over 2 games. But how does that all change with him now in the fold? That is what I think about the first half of the season and what it means now. I think it's a clean cut. I love this, that Siakam's first game was game 42. So it'll be very easy to talk about splits and halves of the season at the end for the Pacers. There'll be a Pascal Siakam half and a not Pascal Siakam half. But the first half of the season, I think, is really 2 seasons. It's the pre-Hornets game season and the post-Hornets game season. And since then, they've been better until this recent 1-3 stretch. They've got 3 tough games coming up, so it could get a little worse. But I am Curious to see who the heck the Pacers are. The team we saw the first 25 games or the 17 after that. And we have way more to talk about with this Pacers team this week. Tomorrow, the resurrection of something you didn't even know could be resurrected. I will not tease you any more than that, but you're going to hear two people on this podcast. Three people. I don't know if I've ever done a three-person Locked On Pacers, or at least not for a long time. It's going to be fascinating, and it's going to be awesome. We'll talk a lot about the Siakam trade, more fallouts from that, what it means to the franchise, et cetera, et cetera. Tuesday, we'll talk the end of Pacers Nuggets. We'll talk more about the trade deadline, non-Siakam edition later this week. So much more to come here on the Locked On Pacers podcast. And of course, there are many games this week. If you enjoyed the show, thanks. Appreciate it. You can interact with me either on Twitter at Tony R. East and the show at Locked On Pacers. And if you're watching my face on YouTube where I'm wearing my IU shirt, go Hoosiers. Shout out to Terry Moore for leading the Hoosiers to a win in Mackey. Chloe Moore McNeil was incredible. If you're watching on YouTube, commenting down below is the way to go. I do read those, so that is a good way for me to get the pulse of that community and what they are thinking about the Pacers. Again, tomorrow, big three-man show, talking more Siakam, trade, etc. And then we'll run through the games and more trade deadline stuff as this week progresses. Thank you all for listening. Have a wonderful day. We will see you soon.